Portable shelters. I have built 10 at least so far. The idea is that they can be dragged around by a tractor for the big ones, for the goats and the horses and the cattle. The great thing is that you hook up a tractor and you pull it to the next spot, and you never had to shovel shit. So many people, it's like Sepp's things. He's got these amazing shelters that he builds, which are an earthen kind of a shelter. So cows are going to require a lot more feed in the wintertime unless you can keep them warm. If you keep them warm, they don't need nearly as much feed. And the problem is that those earthen shelters need to be cleaned out. You need to get a tractor in there. And his design is dominantly, the shape and size of it is dominantly ruled by how big it needs to be in order to be able to get a tractor in there to be able to get all the muck out. And then my concern is like, well, if there's muck to be gotten out, does that not mean that the animals are in there with that muck? And how healthy is that for them? So, when I've got the portable shelters, what I do is when I move to a new paddock, I look for where the soils are the poorest, and that's where I park the shelter, because most animals are going to poop in that. There's only one animal that I know of that doesn't. Which one? Pigs. Pigs won't shit in their own shelter. So pigs are a very clean animal. They've got a bad rap. If you put them into a tiny confined space and then they just shit all over the place, it's like they don't have any place to shit but pretty much where they're standing. What the fuck did you think was going to happen? They're a very clean animal. Now granted, when it gets really, really hot outside and they don't have sweat glands, they're going to do anything they can to cool off, which includes covering themselves in mud, and which I imagine any of you would do also if you were in the same boat, or getting into a wallow. Or if they're desperate enough, they will roll in their own shit. If you put them on a cement pad and you don't give them a way to cool off and they are just cooking to death, yeah, they're going to try anything. And it's like, look at that fucking pig, so fucking nasty, rolling around in his own shit. It's like the nasty party is not the pig. So, okay, so here's Holzer's stuff, and it's like, it is a brilliant thing in so many ways, but it does have the job of being able to having to muck it out. Not to mention the fact that sun doesn't get in there as easily, and sun is a great disinfectant. I'm concerned about diseases building up and that kind of thing. And so I don't care for these very much for animals. I would rather have something that is portable.
Even in the winter?
Even in the winter, but you can have something insulated and then pack that around.
Yeah, what is the deep mulch system in here?
Joel Salatin does it a lot, and it works. And also outside of Salatin, there's a lot of people that do chickens that do this. And so, like Salatin will end up, he'll just keep throwing down wood chips or straw or whatever. So cows will be in the same area all winter long, and he just keeps throwing it in, and then it'll get to be good 3 feet, 3.5 feet deep by the end of the winter. And then what he does is that when he started it, he threw a bunch of corn down on the bottom of it. And then at the end, then the cows they're walking in, their feet are this high up off the ground, and then they walk off of this, off into the pasture. Then he brings the pigs in, and the pigs will root for the corn, thus turning it all in the compost. Now, it does dramatically reduce the smell, and it may even help a lot with any kind of diseases, because when you drag that compost out with the tractor, then you're dragging any potential diseases out with it. Plus the composting, as pointed out earlier, is going to break down a lot of those pathogens. So, and then as the pigs root, it puts a lot of air into the system and gets it to compost aerobically instead of anaerobically. So in chicken systems, they do a similar thing. They'll have very, very deep bedding. And I got a video out where a gal used pine branches. And she had much better results with pine branches, like from a Christmas tree or live boughs or whatever, than by using sawdust or straw. And I was really amazed at how fresh it smelled in there, because if you go into a chicken coop and it smells like ammonia, then I think that that's like, you know, that's chicken torture, that's chicken abuse, that's terrible. It's really difficult to ask a chicken to live inside of a place with so much of its own shit, and it just reeks that much. If you don't like the smell of it, you're doing it wrong.
Well, I have a question. It's kind of technical. It's about like portable shelters, and in the winter, if you have a portable shelter that's insulated, but you still keep the bottom having air pockets so that the shit to the bottom.
If it's a pig shelter, have a bottom. Any other animal, I would never have a bottom. And because it's what I want is I want the shit to hit the ground, and then I want to move the shelter, so that way they're not standing around in their own
Oh, so
shit.
there's just like no floor at all.
No floor at all.
I see. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
How are you going to keep it warm in the winter, though?
That's a great question, and it's like the animals. It's for most of the animals that we're talking about caring for, like here in Montana. They will stay warm if you feed them more. So really, it's not a matter of like them dying or anything. What it is a matter of like, how do you reduce their feed needs and thus increase their comfort? Which I think increasing their comfort is a good thing, especially for some of these animals like the chicken, which is actually a jungle animal. And so here we are in Montana, we've taken it far, far away from its environment. But eliminating drafts. It's like if you have a drafty barn, that's sometimes, some people consider a drafty barn to be worse than leaving them outside. So, but really what you want to do is eliminate drafts, but you also need to have enough ventilation that they're not, you know, sitting in some sort of manure pile of their own manure. And so you can have a shelter that doesn't have drafts, and then you can even kind of hang some kind of carpety bits on some of it, or, you know, burlap or something to kind of slow down so that the animals will walk through a part and part the fabric to get inside, so it reduces it from the front. But if you've got 3 good solid walls, that reduces all of the drafts, and they can stay remarkably warmer and drier in an environment like that.
Even with like sitting on top of a grate with all that cold air and like the thing flapping in the breeze, is their body heat really going to hold in a skiddable shelter?
Well, okay, let's explore this for yourself.
Okay.
If you're inside of a shelter and the wind is not passing through but passing around, are you warmer? You've got the rain off, you got the snow off. You may have some straw on the ground. Like when it gets really, really cold, you might choose to go out there and throw a bunch of straw inside of it. And then the straw really helps to keep them warm. But it's like, would you be warmer? If you were in there, would you be warmer?
Yeah, I was just wondering, like, because the skiddable shelters here, they're fucking heavy. I mean, they're beefy. So it's like, to get them to not wobble, they have to be beefy. And then you have to add some kind of enclosure. And I was just kind of trying to figure out, would you be able to do that to the point where they're warm enough to stay alive, and then still be able to move it to have that convenience of not picking up all the shit?
So the skiddable structures that we have here now are like, for example, willow bank. So we can hook a tractor up to that. We can hook the Kubota that we have now, hook it up to that, and we can drag it wherever we want to go, right? Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
I mean, we got some, like I think if we went up to the Love Shack, I'm not sure if the Kubota could move the Love Shack. But that thing is like somebody lined the interior of that, like the wood paneling on the inside is made out of 2x6s, thus making that whole structure kind of like lead weighted. It's a heavy, heavy thing now.
That's what brought up the question.
Okay.
So it's kind of obvious, but so you're talking about like portable buildings, little trailers, using those as paddocks. I mean, using those as not paddocks, housing.
Yes.
It's transportable through your paddocks.
Yes.
Switching that from one paddock to another.
Right.
Just,
And
Yeah.
then you just need to have somebody like Tim around that can figure out how to make the wheels and everything work if you want to be really using.
I think it's plausible that you could take our skiddable shelters right now And you could come up with something where you could say, okay, now today we're going to move this, and because it's too heavy for the tractor, we can attach some wheels to it. And yeah, Tim would probably invent something clever to go onto that.
Careful design will reduce the amount of material in those structures hugely.
And that sounds even better.
Yeah.
So
And
it's
if
kind of
you're
like,
if you're pulling on grass, you just get old poly irrigation pipe,
There you
run it
go.
under the wood, nail it either end, and that thing's like snow skis.
Yep.
there you go.
And it doesn't wear out.
So, and then of course.
If you like this sort of thing, come on out to the forums at permies.com, where we talk about raising chickens, homesteading, and permaculture all the time.